Welcome to Haggie Reads For You on Wolf Spirit Radio. Colleen, Haggie, reads children's stories for the wee ones up to the teens. She also reads books for grown-ups. Tune in, kick back, relax, and listen in. You're listening to Wolf Spirit Radio.
Hi everyone, this is Colleen, and this is Wednesday, February 10, 2016, and you are listening to Haggie Shack Radio, simulcast through Wolf Spirit Radio, and this is Haggie Reads For You. Today, I'm going to pick up where I left off last week and finish Alien Minds by Everett. Evans, and I'll start with Chapter 20. Captain George Hanlon jumped from the big tricycle and ran into the residence. None of the guards or servants tried to stop him, so dumbfounded were they by all that had been happening. Knowing the way from his controlling of the bird that had found Amir's rooms, Hanlon was soon there. He did not stop to see what was happening to the others, but ran across the bedroom to that far door and rapped on it to attract the attention of the ruler hiding behind it. "Everything is safe now, Nair," he called through the badly charred panels. "The assassin is dead. You can come out now." "Is this some new trick?" a voice came thinly. "No, sire. It is no trick, but the truth. You are safe now." "Who are you?" Hanlon started to give his name, then remembered that the ruler did not know anything about him. He quickly changed it to, "I'm Ergo Lona, the groom with whom you talked on the ride the other morning." "Lona? Where did you disappear to, and why?" suspiciously. "Indar discharged me, but I've been watching over you just the same. On my honor, Nair, you may believe me." After some further hesitation, there was the sound of the padding being removed from the keyhole, the insertion and the turning of the key. As the door opened a mere crack, Elis Amir peered cautiously out, but instead of the clothing of a groom or a countryman, he saw the brilliant space blue and silver of an interstellar corps uniform. He started to pull shut the door, but Hanlon had stuck the toe of his boot in it. "It's all right, Nair. I am Lona, the groom. I am also George Hanlon, a captain in the Terran Interstellar Corps. We discovered that another attempt was being made on your life, and were lucky enough to get here in time to block it." He took hold of the edge of the door and pulled it open, for the ruler was so surprised by this revelation that he made no real effort to hold it shut. Amir came slowly, surprisedly, into the bedroom, staring keenly at Hanlon. "You don't look like Lona, but the voice does seem to be the same. How does it happen that the Federation has men here? Were you spying on me?" "Not on you, sire, but on your enemies," Hanlon said earnestly. "Let me introduce you to Admiral New." He had half turned back as he spoke, and now for the first time saw his father on the floor, a hand clutching his shoulder, from which a great stain of blood was drenching the uniform sleeve. "Ring for the physician!" Hanlon turned and commanded the ruler. Then, realizing this was no way to be addressing a planetary head, he quickly but entreatingly added, "Please, Nair." Elis Amir called in one of the servants clustered outside, and commanded curtly, Get the doctor here immediately." Then he went over to the two on the floor. "Let me look." He half pushed Hanlon aside and stooped to peer closely at the wounded shoulder. "Help me get him onto the bed," he said after a quick inspection. "I don't think any of the bone is gone. It's just a bad flesh burn." Tenderly, the two men raised the Admiral, who protested weakly that he could get up by himself, and lifted him onto the bed. Amir himself began pulling off the Admiral's tunic, while Hanlon helped. By the time the doctor came running in and took over the dressing of the wound, they had the arm and shoulder bared, but the elder Newton, in spite of his protestations, had fainted from the loss of blood and shock. Amir sent the assembled servants away, retaining only his dresser, who helped him on with his day clothes. The doctor worked swiftly, as Hanlon watched anxiously, applying ointments to the burn and finally bandaging it. "He's weak from all the blood he lost, and doesn't seem to have been in too good condition anyway," the doctor said at last. "I hope the man's strong enough to pull through." "Then give him some plasma," Hanlon said frantically. "He needs it." "I don't know what you mean." The doctor was bewildered by the word, for Hanlon had had to use the Terran word plasma, not knowing any translation for it. "A blood transfusion, then, or at least some glucose." "I don't know anything about those either. Say, you're not an Australian, are you?" "No, we're Terrans." "You mean you folks don't know anything about giving one person's blood to another?" "Sorry, but I've never heard of such a thing. How's it done?" The doctor was apparently more interested in this new idea than in the Admiral's desperate condition. Hanlon felt faint. He staggered away from the bedside without answering, and went into the anteroom, where Hooper stood talking to Enver and some other officials, who had heard the commotion and had come to see what it was all about. Hooper saw Hanlon's haggard face and knew something was wrong. "Were we too late?" he gasped. "Oh, no, we got Irad and saved Amir, but Dad was blasted, shoulder. The doctor's fixed him up as best he can, but Dad's in shock, and these backward fools never heard of plasma or blood transfusions." Hooper jumped forward. "I can give a transfusion. What's your dad's blood type?" he asked as they hurried to the bedside. "Same as mine." Hanlon was peeling off his coat as he spoke, his eyes lighting with relief. Hooper rapped quick questions at the doctor, but the latter shook his head. More questions and more negative answers. Then Hooper turned disconsolately to Hanlon. "They don't even have anything I could use to give a transfusion. No hollow needles, not even hypodermics." The doctor pulled on Hooper's arm. "Please tell me what you mean by blood transfusions and plasma." "How do you give them? What for? And what did the other man mean when he said he had the same blood type as the wounded man?" Hanlon went to sit beside his father's bedside and sank into an apparent mood of despair. Meanwhile, the ruler had finished dressing, and with his son, Enver, went over to listen to what Major Hooper was telling the doctor. "Will you please tell me what all is going on here?" Amir asked so plaintively that the SS man had trouble concealing a grin, but Hooper sobered instantly. "The Federation's interstellar corps, sire," he began his explanation, "found out about the fact that opposition to your desire to accept their invitation was becoming stronger and dangerous to you and to the peace of your planet. They sent 4 of us here to study the situation and to protect you if possible. To do that, it was necessary for us to disguise ourselves as natives of your world, so we could move about freely and unnoticed. That is why Captain Hanlon worked it so that you would notice him, hire him as a servant of some sort here, and he would thus be able to watch over you and conditions in general from close at hand. We had found out that Adwal Irad was at the head of this opposition and a crime wave, and that his plans included your death. But now you're all in uniform and your disguises removed. Yes, Nair. We were planning to come as ourselves tomorrow, or rather this morning, and seek an audience with you. We knew about the attempt to assassinate you that was made on your daily ride, and so we're watching you more carefully than ever. When we saw Irad trying to get into your room, and his men he had planted in your guards, keeping back the servants who wished to come to your assistance, we hurried here to help protect you. It was so apparent Irad was determined to complete the killing he failed at the other time. Ela Samir, ruler of Estrella, took that startling news with barely a tremor. He motioned them to a seat along the side of the bedroom to continue his questioning. The doctor was dismissed, although it was plain he wanted to stay and ask this Terran more about those strange and new methods of treating wounds. So until dawn, the ruler and his son, now second in line following the death of Irad, sat talking to Major Hooper about the Federation of Planets and the benefits Estrella would obtain from joining the other worlds. Such things as the advances in medicines in which your doctor is so interested are but minor matters among the many we can and gladly will tell you if you wish, Hooper said. The corpsman was able to convince Amir of the falsity of the rumors and arguments Irad had spread about how Estrella would lose her sovereignty if she joined, and that Terra would make slaves of her people. That is such a damnable thing to say, Nair. Hooper was almost angry, but very much in earnest. You have only to send some trusted advisors to the various planets of the Federation. We will gladly furnish them with transportation as we did before, and have them talk to the common people of any or all of our worlds. They will find that while we of Terra were the ones who developed space travel and sent people to colonize the first discovered and habitable planets, that the citizens of each world choose their own form of government, and that many of them are now even stronger than is Terra, the mother world. And there are peoples of several worlds who are natives and not Terrans or their descendants, whom we have not only not enslaved, but are helping to grow culturally, so they may someday be advanced enough to join us as full-fledged equal members of the Federation, just as you, with your advanced civilization, were invited to do. While all this conversation was going on in low tones across the room, George Hanlon sat by the side of his father's bed, almost in a trance, so deep was his concentration. From what he had learned while breaking past the disintegrating barriers in Adwal Irad's mind, and from the techniques he had learned to apply to his previous excursions into other minds, he now found that, because his father was unconscious rather than merely asleep, he could, in a way, bypass those barriers and get down into the depths of cell and glands in his father's mind and body. even though he could not fully penetrate the block into memories, nor control the elder's actions. Carefully, Hanlon studied those depths, aided also by what he had also learned in his healing of the cavale. But from his intensive studies of human physiology and neurons and allied sciences, today, the totality of his admittedly meager knowledge, yet guided by things no human physician had learned so far, he at last began to trace the pattern of how human cells, tissues, and nerves regenerated themselves, and how new blood leukocytes are made in the glands of the lymph and the spleen. He was also able to trace the connectors between the minute organisms and the brain that directed their activities. Then he set himself to the delicate task of activating those functions to begin and hasten the healing process. Hour after hour he sat there, oblivious to all else taking place around him, his own body lolling almost lifelessly in the big chair, while all his mental powers were engaged in the monumental and hitherto unheard-of task to which he had set himself. The other three men concluded their conference at last, and got up, stretching hugely to pull themselves more awake after their half-night vigil. Amir called in his servants and ordered them to prepare and serve breakfast here for himself and his guests. Enver ran back to his own apartment to dress more completely for the day. Hooper walked over to where Hanlon was sitting. "Asleep?" he half-whispered, doubtful because of the way the young man's body was sprawled in the deep chair. George Hanlon stirred and sat up, flashing a smile. "You didn't need to whisper, Kurt," he said. "I wasn't asleep, just helping Dad get well." The Major stared at him in amazement. "What do you mean?" "You're half a doctor, Kurt. Take a look at Dad's wound." Doubtfully, not fully understanding even yet what his companion meant, Hooper removed the bandage. He stared unbelievingly at the wounded shoulder. The deep portions of that terrible burn were completely regenerated with healthy tissue. There was no sign of inflammation, no scarred tissue or fused flesh, as usually shows in a fresh flame gun burn. The upper parts of the injury, too, were already beginning to heal toward the center. Why, he was astounded. That should have taken weeks. I never knew a wound to heal that fast. "I found out how to speed up the cells and things," Hanlon said simply. Admiral Newton roused as they talked, perhaps at the touch of Hooper's gentle hands removing the bandage. Now he opened his eyes, and after a moment to realize his surroundings and recall the events of his injuries, smiled at his co-workers. "Hi, fellas. Everything under control?" "Yes, sir, all okay," Hooper answered. "I think the ruler is about ready to sign up." "Good. Good work. Say, I feel fine. No pain, yet I seem to have a memory of being blasted. Of fainting." He frowned and then shrugged. "Couldn't have been much after all." "It was very bad, sir," Hooper assured him. "The burn was almost to the bone in your shoulder, and you lost a lot of blood. But now the wound is over half healed." "Great, John. How long was I out?" "Only a few hours, Dad," Hanlon said. "Oh, you found the kit, then." "What kit?" "There's a complete emergency medical surgical kit in the seat of my tricycle." "Now he tells us." Hooper spread his hands and spoke in mock despair. Probably just as well, Hanlon said. If we'd known about that, I might never have felt the necessity of discovering how to heal wounds as I did. What are you talking about? The Admiral looked from one to the other in perplexity. The kid's too modest to tell you, sir. Hooper broke in, ignoring Hanlon's signal to keep quiet. I don't pretend to know how he did it, but somehow or another he managed, with his mind, to stimulate and speed up the healing, so that at the rate it's been going, your wound should be all well in another 24 hours. I'll bandage it up again, and then, unless you're too weak, you can get up and help us eat breakfast the ruler's having sent up for us all. Young Enver, who had returned to the bedroom, was standing there, listening to all this. Now his expressive eyes lighted up, and he touched Hanlon's arm. When the young SS man turned to face him, Enver breathlessly asked, "Was that the way my cavall got well so fast?" Hanlon grinned at him. "I knew it was your favorite mount, and I didn't want to see it destroyed." He turned quickly back to his father, to help his father get up. The Admiral found that, while he was still a little shaky, he could stand up without dizziness. The ruler had sent his uniform jacket out to be cleaned and mended, and this Newton donned. Soon the men were seated about the table the servants had set up, eating the splendid breakfast they bought and served. Meantime, the five talked about the problem that so much interested them all, and that meant so much to all the peoples of their worlds. Our colonel and survey bureaus are constantly seeking throughout space for other planets having intelligent races, and we feel sure yours will not be the last we'll find. Admiral Newton told the ruler and his son, "It is egotistical and silly to think we Terrans are the only civilized people in the universe. Chances are we'll find others who are as far ahead of us in intelligence, science, and technologies as you Australians are ahead of us in ethics," Hanlon added honestly. Amir and Enver looked up in astonishment at that simple statement. You actually mean, honestly, that you Terrans do not believe you are the highest form of life in the universe? Enver put their questioning into words. "Great John, no," Admiral Newton exploded. "Oh, I suppose," he added more slowly, "that there are some Earth people who may still feel that way, but the majority of us do not, especially those who have traveled at all extensively. We used to think that, used to believe hundreds of years ago, that we were the only intelligent life in the cosmos. But we know better now that we're spreading out. I personally have been on at least 6 planets that contain intelligent life that did not stem from Terra, although yours is the highest of the 6. And none of the rest are yet at the point where they can be asked to affiliate with the Federation as equal members. But those others are being taught and coached as best we can, and as much as they want to be. In a few more generations, they'll probably have reached the point where they will be ready to be seriously considered for equality status with us, as far as Federation membership is concerned." "Just how do you determine the fitness of a race for membership in your Federation?" Enver leaned forward, his expressive eyes questioning. His father started to rebuke him for his forwardness, but the Admiral interrupted. "No, that's a good question, and we're glad to answer it, just as we're glad to answer any questions to which we know the answers. As to this one, we look first for signs of intelligence, great enough to enable the people to govern themselves without continual warfare," he said earnestly. "Their knowledge of science and technology is not so important, we feel, although their ability to learn is. Some races will probably never have real need for machines of any sort. Races like the plant men of Algon, where Captain Hanlon was recently instrumental in freeing them from slavery. He paused a moment to marshal his thoughts. Then we look to see if they're making a conscious effort to advance in education and learning. No matter along what lines they may be, he continued. We study their knowledge and interest in ethical matters, their religion, and their belief in the general concept of right and wrong, of decency, and observance of the rights of others. If they have these things, and have, above all, the desire and determination to continue their cultural growth, then we consider them worthy of equal Federation membership. And your wonderful people certainly measure up to all of those concepts, Hanlon added sincerely. Chapter 21. The 5 had finished eating by now, and the ruler rose. I will call my advisers together and discuss this matter with them, he said, but I can tell you now that I am more than ever disposed to accept your invitation. I could do so this moment, he said with a deprecating smile. But I like to make sure that the leaders of my people agree with my decisions as much as possible. I will have a servant show you to my study, where you can discuss your own plans, while my ministers, my son and myself, talk in the council chambers. I will let you know as soon as we reach a definite decision. Thank you, Nair. We will kindly await your answer. Admiral Newton rose too and bowed, as did Hanlon and Hooper. And thanks for the fine meal, Hanlon grinned. I was really hungry. Everett came up to him and laid his hand on Hanlon's shoulder. I like you, he said simply, but from the heart. I hope we shall always be friends, and shall meet often through the coming years. In the little study the 3 found easy chairs, and Admiral Newton turned first to Major Hooper. As far as I know now, we'll all be going back when the sneak boat comes in a day or so. I suggest you go back to Simonides and get in touch with the High Command to get your next assignment. Right, sir, will do. About you, Spence. I want you to come with me and... Excuse me, Dad. But if I can have some free time, there is some very important research I want to do that I think will benefit humanity much more than another detective assignment. What's on your mind, son? This new ability I'm beginning to get, Hanlon said seriously. I've found I can get down to the level of the body cells and glands with my mind, and I think that with more study and research, I can learn things no one else has ever known before. But I'll need a lot of help from research doctors and endocrinologists to tell me things I don't know. I may be all wet, but I have an idea I can, in time, make some very important contributions to medical science. With their help in telling me what to look for, and if it can be arranged so I can have time to devote to that. I don't mean, he added, flushing with embarrassment, that I think You are, whether you think so or not, his father interrupted, eyes gleaming with pride and some amusement. With those special gifts of yours, you can do things no one else ever hoped to do. Such research will certainly be worthwhile, especially if you can help others learn how to heal wounds as fast as you did mine. Speaking of which, Hooper broke in, I suggest, Admiral, that you lay down while you're talking. It'll be less strain on your body and heart, and you're still weak, even if you won't admit it, he added as he saw a protest forming on Newton's lips. When Hanlon added his entreaties to Hooper's, the Admiral grinned and lay down on a couch there in the study. Anybody'd think you guys were the head men, not me, he growled, but good-naturedly. Then he sobered quickly and went back to their discussion. I'll have to take it up with the board, of course, but I think they'll agree. I know nothing definite needing you right at the moment, so they'll probably give you a leave of absence for that research. I'd like to go to some other planet than Terra or Simonides, Hanlon said. One where I'm not known, so I won't have to be watching out for anyone who might recognize me. And if I'm to do this study, I'll want authorization to work at some of their insane asylums, too. Why those in John's name? When I tackled Irad's mind towards the end, I was able to get down inside of it, further than I've ever been in any other person's mind, because he was insane at the last, and his mind was breaking down. There seemed to be a block or barrier in every sane person's mind that I can't get through. But you got into your father's. Hooper looked puzzled. In Dad's case, Kurt, it was only because he was unconscious, rather than asleep or awake, that I could penetrate. Even then, I had to bypass the barrier, to get down deep enough to touch the cells and glands and such things. Of course, with more study and practice, now that I know more about it, I may be able to reach those depths in spite of the block. Oh, heck! I sound like I consider myself a Superman. He flushed again, and his eyes implored them not to think him conceited. We know you neither are a Superman, nor think you are, his father assured him quickly. You have a special gift, and you are trying to use it to benefit others, that's all. Don't be modest. It's really false modesty in a way. Go ahead with your ideas. Well, I'd also like to try working with engineers and technies to see if it would possible be able to rig up some sort of mechanical method of doing the same thing. Newton shook his head in puzzled wonder. You're completely beyond understanding, Spence. I sometimes wonder if you're human, if you're really the son of Martha and myself. Why, no, Hanlon grinned. Didn't you know? I'm a changeling the little elves left on your doorstep. His father and Hooper laughed away the tension. Could be at that, the Admiral said. Well, I'll certainly recommend to the board that they grant you all the time and opportunity you need. If you can get to the bottom of this, and especially if you can teach other doctors how to get at those glands and use them, that'll be the hard part, Dad. What I do hope to be able to do is perhaps find more exactly how the nerves and cells and glands work, and then doctors would be better able to diagnose and treat various diseases and injuries. They were interrupted by Enver, who came in to ask certain questions the ruler and advisers wished to know. Would it be possible, or rather, is it something you would permit, he asked, for us to set up some sort of advanced school or university here, and have you send us instructors? A place where our best young men and women could go to study the many things we know nothing about. It certainly will be possible, and it is a wonderful idea, Admiral Newton assured him. And one thing we want to make clear, that you do not yet seem sure of. That is, that there is no question of our permitting you to do what you want to do. None whatsoever, in any way, shape, or form. Your government is, and will always be, completely autonomous. Always handled as you people see fit to work it. We never, under any circumstances, try to make other races conform to any standards or regulations they do not wish to make their own. We will give you freely of our knowledge, our science and technologies, our beliefs and concepts. But you, Australians, will be the sole and only judge of what you want to accept. And we will want to have you send some of your people to our universities to teach us the advanced things you know that we don't. Your system of ethics, for instance, and the way you have learned to live together so closely and honestly. After Everett had gone back to the conference, the three men sat waiting. Newton had almost fallen asleep. Hooper was completely so, when Hanlon stirred. "I don't know, though," he ruminated aloud. "Maybe there's something else more important than that research at the moment." "What?" his father roused himself sufficiently to ask. "That alien being I contacted in Irad's mind." "What in Snyder's name are you talking about?" Newton raised up in excitement. "What alien?" "Oh, that's right, I didn't tell you. Your being hurt and my trying to heal you made me forget it." Hanlon explained swiftly about the strange mind and its startling communication. Admiral Newton swung his feet to the floor. All thoughts of sleep banished. "And you waited all this time to tell me a thing as important as that?" he demanded incredulously and almost angrily. "Sorry, Dad. I just happened to feel your life was more important at the moment, because the other could wait for a— Okay, I'll buy that for now. But we'll have to make other arrangements immediately. We'll have to find out where it come from and whether this or other oligarchy or federation or whatever it is a menace to us." "I don't think it is," Hanlon said slowly. The being's mind was very peculiar, but it appeared to be extremely logical in its thoughts. It said that since it had lost and we've won here, it was withdrawing. And I don't believe it meant temporarily either. I think it meant it was all through here, and don't be silly or childish, son. The Admiral was intense and forceful. That one being may have felt that way, but his bosses won't. With two groups of planets so near in space, both with means of space travel, there's bound to be war of some sort. Whether actual, ideological, or economic remains to be seen. We'll have to hunt them up and find out what it's all about. And immediately. Hanlon shook his head. "I'll acknowledge your greater experience, Dad, but I still have a feeling you're wrong about this. I believe that other race is entirely different in their way of thinking to ours. That they are coldly logical, and not the type to keep on fighting for something they've already lost. But of course," he shrugged, "it's up to the High Command to decide. I'd still like to get on with that other research." "I'll put both problems up to the board," Newton said, "but I bet I know what they'll decide. There's the fact that those beings can read and control all our minds except yours. It looks like your job, son. Yours and no one else's. Although we'll all be behind you in every way we can, of course. Meanwhile," stretching out on the couch again, "until Amir and his advisors want us, I think we'd both better take a nap." "I'm kind of pooped at that," Hanlon said, and sprawled out in his chair. The Admiral was soon asleep. But only Hanlon's body and part of his mind relaxed. The balance of his mind was inside his father's body again, speeding the healing of that shoulder burn. Finally, Everett came to call the three Terrans into the council chamber. His broadly smiling face, and the thoughts Hanlon read from the surface of his mind, told him the decision had been favorable, a fact he signaled to the others at once. "We are completely convinced now," Elis Amir told them when the Terrans were seated about the conference table, "that our world will be best served by joining your federation as we were asked to do. If you have the treaty papers at hand, I will gladly sign them, and my son looking proudly at young Enver, will sign with me as the next ruler of Styria. We do not have the proper documents, Admiral Newton said, but our ship will be here tomorrow night, and it has long-range communicators, with which I will immediately get in touch with the Federation Council, who will send accredited ambassadors here at once. They should be here within 5 days. Now that we've made up our minds, we are anxious to affiliate with the other worlds. We feel it is a tremendous honor being the first non-Terran race asked to join them. As it is an honor for us to have such a high-principled peoples join to us, Admiral Newton said with a courtly bow. May I suggest, Nair and Nairs, that when our ambassadors arrive, you ask them for whatever help you desire, in the way of teachers, goods, or materials. They will gladly explain what we have to offer, and I know that they will study you and your people to find the things that they will ask for in exchange. Remember always, please, that it is our steadfast policy to teach only what you really want to know, and which you specifically ask for, not what we think you ought to know. That one thing alone, Elisamer said, deeply moved as were the members of his council, would be enough to confirm to us our belief that we will be doing the right thing for our people in joining you. Amir, his son, and the councilors rose and bowed. The 3 Terrans had also risen and saluted punctiliously. Then Newton stepped forward impulsively and held out his hand, which Amir grasped as though he had always used the gesture. "Welcome to the Federation of Planets, sire." Newton's voice was filled with emotion. The ruler silently wrung his hand. When it was time for the corpsmen to leave, after some general conversation between them all, the ruler and his son were again profuse in their gratitude for what the men had done personally to save Amir's life and the peace of their world. They escorted the 3 downstairs and out to Newton's tricycle, and stood at a Strellan salute as the Terrans got into their machine. "Oh, one thing, Lona." The ruler came forward just as Hanlon was getting in. Amir's eyes were filled with puzzled wonderment. "How did you know Adwal-Irad was coming to attack me while I was asleep, locked in my room?" Hanlon's eyes danced, but he kept his face straight. "We have a saying on Terra, Nair, that explains it. A little bird told me." And he bowed again as he entered the machine, and Admiral Newton drove away, leaving behind a more than ever puzzled ruler of the soon-to-be newest member of the Federation of Planets. The end. Oh no! I really, really hate for this book to end. I am enjoying it so much, and I hope you are too. Well, you're listening to Haggie Reads for You from Haggie Shack Radio, simulcast to Wolf Spirit Radio. And I thank you all for listening. I'll see y'all later. Bye now.